All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So today, I know I said I was going to teach you guys about the powers of Congress, but I thought there was a lesson already I made for that, and apparently I didn't. So we're going to start off with the presidency, okay? And actually, we're going to look at the part three that I have of the presidency, um, because this one does a pretty good job in explaining things, and then we'll go back to like the requirements to be president. Okay, so we're going to analyze the oath the president must take, and then we're going to examine the significance of the presidential pardons, and we're going to create an argument on who should pick the designated survivor. And if you have no idea what that is, you're probably going to like this idea. Okay, whoops, let me go back there. Okay, so here's your warm up picture. So if you notice, each person, there's a picture of Trump, picture of Biden, and they have the black paint rollers, right? So they basically covered up letters to the words America and United States. And if you notice, they say a certain word that each one of them kind of subliminally is trying to convey, trying to show. Okay. So look at those two words and ask yourself the question: what do you think this artist is trying to say about when we pick our presidents? What kind of person should we be looking out for? You know. So again, look at what each of those characters, um, what letters they, left unpainted, and what do you think this artist is trying to say about that? About when we pick our presidents. So think about it. Write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. Now, Article 2, Section 1 basically says the requirements to become president, which we will talk about later on. Okay. Uh, but today, we're going to be looking at the oath of office. So, when a president is elected and it comes the inauguration day, they then take an oath. The Chief Justice, whoever it may be, tells them, "Are you ready to take the oath?" They say, "I do." And then they go, "I, so and so, do solemnly swear or affirm," it just depends on the person's preference, "that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." That's it. That's all they have to say, and they are now officially the president of the United States. Now, here's the thing where some people who are, especially those who are pretty like religious and things like that, who think they know everything about the government, they're like, "Oh, well, why doesn't it say so help me God?" It's not required. If you look at the Constitution, Section 2, Article 1, at the oath, it does not say that the president has to say so help me God at the end. It's not there, you know. Is it a tradition? Yeah, it's a tradition now, but does the president have to say that in order to be president? No. So if any time in the future, a future president says, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, and they end it right there, they can. That's their right. They did what the Constitution says they need to say. Okay. Now, just a little fun facts about the inaugurations. George Washington, our first president, on his first inauguration, he had to get to Philadelphia to basically give his be at his inauguration and some of that. Problem is, he didn't have enough money to get there, you know, so he had to borrow money to make it to his own inauguration. John Quincy Adams, our sixth president, um, didn't put his hand on the Bible. He put his hand on a law book. Okay. Now, that whole part I told you guys about the "So help me God," supposedly Chester A. Arthur was the first president to say that. And the reason why he said that is because he took over for a president who had been shot, killed. Okay. And that when he took the oath of office, he said at the end, as because he's kind of scared, you know, saying, "So help me God." Okay. Now, some people try to say Washington was the first president to ever say that. I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of reading about the presidents in my lifetime, and I've never come across that. Same thing with Lincoln. Lincoln's my boy. I've read about him like no other person, and I have yet to find that. Did Lincoln use religion in speeches and stuff like that, talking about God and stuff like that? Yeah, but in his swearing in, no, I have not found anything like that. In his inauguration speech, he's used God, he's used references from the Bible, but I've never heard him say or read that he used "So help me God." Okay. Franklin Pierce, our 14th president, is the only president still to this day to say, "I do solemnly affirm." Every president has to swear, but to him, he was like, "No, you're not supposed to swear on the Bible." Okay, that's his choice. Now, the longest speech ever given at the inauguration was by William Henry Harrison. His speech was 8,445 words long, and it took him an hour and 45 minutes to give it. Now, here's the other thing about that speech. When he gave that speech, it was rainy, cold, windy. He didn't have any coat on, didn't have any gloves, hat, no nothing. He's just out there in the rain with the cold and the wind. Everyone else who's watching or hearing his speech is bundled up, has the coats, have this and that, you know. So a couple days later, he gets sick, and 30 days later, he dies. He is the shortest term president we've ever had. So if you ever have somebody, in the future, like if you're at college or whatever, saying something like, "Oh, you can't die from giving a speech," you better look him in the eye and say, "President Harrison did. He died giving a speech." All right. The shortest speech was by George Washington. It was on his second inauguration. So he was already president. He ran for re-election. He won. He basically comes out to the people and he says, stuff like, "Hey, thank you for being here. Hey, we did a good job. We're going to continue doing a good job. Thank you again for your votes, and out of here." That was it. It was so short. You know, a lot of those stuff I've read, it says like, "Oh, it's less than 10 minutes." In all honesty, it was probably more like 5 minutes. Probably no more than that. And it's gone. Now, in the section in white, that is straight from the Constitution. This is Section 2 of Article 2 of the Constitution. Basically, the first paragraph says that the president has wartime powers. Now, what exactly are wartime powers? We don't really know. It just says that the president has it. Now, why would the founding fathers do that? The reason they did that is because they didn't want to limit the president in what they could do or should be able to do during times of war. So, like if the founding fathers said, let's say they said, the president can't do this thing number one, whatever it may be. Okay. This thing number one. And let's say later on in the future, there's a war going on and the president needs to do thing number one, but he can't because the Constitution doesn't let him. The United States might lose a war, you know, and it's not just losing the war, we might lose territory, people's lives, things like that. So, in order to prevent that, because remember, the founding fathers, they were smart men, but like all smart men, they knew that they didn't know everything. They couldn't predict the future. So, they just, left it wide open for interpretation. Whatever the president needs to do to save American lives during times of war, so be it. Okay. But what it does say in that first paragraph is clear as day is that the president is the commander in chief of the armed forces, of the military. So that's Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, space, for crying out loud. The president is the top person. Doesn't matter if you have a 4-star general who's fought in so many wars, won every single medal there is. He only has to answer to one person, and that's the president of the United States. Okay. Now, Section 2, or I should say, paragraph 2 of Section 2, basically says that the president has the power to pardon people. Yes, but there's only two groups of people that he cannot pardon. One is people who are impeached. Okay. The second thing is people who are um, guilty of treason. Okay. Now, this is really relevant because there are some people who said that, former President Trump, if he got impeached, then he could make the vice president pardon him and then he could become president again. No. Two things wrong with that thing right away. Number one, if the president, like Trump, was to be impeached, the vice president can't pardon him because he's been impeached. And the second thing is, if someone's been impeached, they can't hold public office anymore, meaning they can't be a governor, a senator, a mayor, even a councilman in a small, tiny city. They can't hold that job. That's what impeachment means. They've lost the power to be in the government at any level. Any level. Okay. The other thing it says is the president can make key appointments. So the president, if we want to make peace with this other country, let's say France, let's just throw them in the mix. He could send an ambassador over there to represent us over there. So if there's a issue going on, this guy could be like, "Hey, let's set up a meeting between the president, myself, and you, and then we can see if we can come to a resolution." Um, he can also assign foreign consuls, Supreme Court justices. He can nominate them. He just can't say, "Oh, I want that guy," and that's automatically the judge. No, they have to go through a process. So he can nominate judges, federal judges too. Same thing with U.S. attorneys, U.S. marshals, um, cabinet officials, independent agency heads. You know, he picks all those people. And that's where it comes to the point where some presidents have picked people who are their friends or who helped out in their campaign and stuff like that, because there's so many positions open when they become president. It's like, well, who do I make the Secretary of Energy? You can hire somebody else, who's a buddy of yours or somebody who actually knows what they're doing. It's your choice. You're the president. Now, Section 3, that section in Brown basically says that the president has to tell Congress, give them a report of how the country's doing, what they plan to do, in the next year or so. This is known as the, oh my gosh, I just had a brain fart right now. A State of the Union address. That's what it is. So, I'm so sorry, I had a brain fart. The State of the Union address. Presidents typically give this every January. Now, President Washington and President Adams, the first and second president, they gave this State of the Union address in person in front of Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, right? Now, President Jefferson, the third president, he didn't really get along too well with members of Congress. So basically, he asked around, like, do I have to tell the people or tell the Congress, give him the speech in front of him face to face? And his people were like, well, technically, it doesn't say you have to uh, give a speech face to face. It just says you have to you know, you have to let Congress know how we're doing, the State of the Union address. So he's like, so I can like write a letter? And they're like, yeah, didn't you be fulfilling your duty as president? So that's what he did. And from Jefferson all the way to President Taft, presidents would write a letter and have somebody in Congress, the Speaker of the House or somebody, read it out to Congress. Okay. But from 1913 with President Wilson all the way till now, every president has gone face to face with the Congress, and given the State of the Union address. Okay. Now, thing is, speaking of Congress, the president does have the power to call both the House of Representatives and the Senate to a special session, a special meeting, and they have to show up. They can't be like, oh, well, I was just leaving right now. I had a vacation planned. No, you go. You have to go. This has been done, several times throughout our history. Most noticeably, the attack on Pearl Harbor. FDR called the special session of Congress. Everyone showed up. September 11th, you know, President Bush called the full session of the Congress in to discuss what's happening, what they found out, what's happening in our country, things like that. Um, so some presidents have done that. And again, do they do it just out of the whim? Just like, hey, I just wanted to talk to you guys. No. Okay. It's only during special circumstances, special events. Now, the president also, he can adjourn Congress. Congress is kind of like you guys. Start of the school year and you get out at the end, right, of the school year, and you have that break in between, some of that. Well, Congress is the same way. Congress can take an early vacation if the president says so. The president is kind of like saying, like, hey guys, let's end our session like 2 weeks early. A lot of times Congress will be like, sure, great. Thank you, Mr. President. House of Representatives, the Senate. A lot of times they'll just, okay, cool. But sometimes some congressmen, who, especially if they don't like the president, will be suspicious and be like, what are you up to? What are you trying to do? You know? So is the president up to something? Maybe, maybe not. It just depends. Okay. Now, there was a show about 10 years ago or so that was called Designated Survivor. And I had some students in the past who asked me, is this a real thing? Yes. Okay. The designated survivor is a secretary chosen by the president to stay behind at an undisclosed location at a large gathering. So the inauguration, State of the Union address, whatever it may be. Anytime the president, Congress, all meet up, the justices, every all the people, like you see in those pictures, anytime people like that are together, the president picks a person in his cabinet to be far away, okay, at a place that nobody knows where they're at, just in case a bomb explodes or somebody goes off and kills everyone there and trying to disrupt our nation's government. At least we would have a president who can lead us through this. Okay, this is done in case a catastrophic event. At least we would have a president. Now, when exactly did this start? I could not figure that out. I've done quite a bit of research, reading through stuff, articles, and books. I couldn't find anything. The only thing I found close to it mentioning it was the Presidential Secession Act of 1947. Basically, on there, that's when the Cold War was happening between the United States and Russia, and the idea that what happens if the president dies? What if the Russians kill the president, send a bomb, kill him? So who would be next in line? And this is where they mentioned something to the effect of to have somebody a distance away at large gatherings, just in case, like an explosion or a catastrophe happens. That way, we still have some system of government. We still have some type of at least president who can, um, you know, lead our country. Now, this position came very, very important during the Cold War era, which is the 1950s and the 1980s. Um, because tensions were pretty high between the United States and Russia. So anytime a large gathering like this happened, they made sure to hide that cabinet member. Um, okay, just in case the Russians launched a weapon. Now, in 1984, they decided to finally publicly release the name of the designated survivor. They didn't tell them where they were. They just said um, during the State of the Union address, the designated survivor will be Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Education, whatever it may be. Okay. But before that, they never said. But from 1984 on, they have said it's going to be this guy or this lady or so and so. Okay. So, with that being said, that's the end of this lesson. So, hopefully, you learned something new. Hopefully, you enjoyed this lesson. All right. So, with that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.